The fourth installment of our webinar series on Brownfield's assessments and resources, what Kansas should know. Okay, next slide. So, okay. All right, so just a few technical notes before we get started. If you have any technical difficulties with your connection, please call the number that is up on the screen or email the email address and someone will assist you. For a faster or quicker response time, I believe replying to the email is best. Isn't that right? Is that right, Sabina?
I would call because that's Sherry's cell phone number. Yeah, I would call her.
Gotcha. Okay, we're recording this workshop today, and it will be available on KSU TAB's website, where you registered for the event, as well as on the webpage we've developed for the entire series. Both links will be shared also in the chat box, and I believe they should already be shared. Next slide. So I'm sure we've all become accustomed to Zoom etiquette over the years, but a few reminders to ensure a pleasant experience for all involved. All participants should be muted, but please double check to ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the webinar. Also, please make sure that your video remains off during the presentation. This can assist with any bandwidth issues you may have. To make sure we're able to verify your attendance, please change your participant name to match the name that you used to register. You can do this by clicking on the participant icon on the Zoom toolbar. When the list of participants come up, please locate yourself, click the More button, and select Rename in the box that will appear asking you to enter a new screen name. And finally, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the event today. Please do so using the chat feature, also located in the Zoom toolbar. We would prefer that the questions be sent to everyone. However, if you are uncomfortable sharing with anyone, you can select the specific speaker to share the question with. So with that, I will pass it over to Sabina for her presentation on TAB resources.
All right, thank you, Seth. So I'm Sabina Martin. I'm a K-State TAB partner. I'm the contact, the point of contact for K-State for Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. And today I'm just going to give you a whirlwind tour through the resources that TAB can assist with or bring to bear for communities who are looking for brownfield redevelopment. So here's some pictures, images of lovely brownfield sites. So if you can see my cursor, this is a former school with an underbelly full of asbestos, an industrial site. Who knows what they did there at one point in time. Probably contamination is present. Obviously here, the old service station with the dispensers, the dispenser island still there. Tanks may be still in the ground too, so the potential for contamination is there. And then we have Main Street. Lots of communities have this scenario where they have underutilized or even vacant buildings on Main Street. Like here, the windows are busted out, and the age of these buildings are such that asbestos and lead-based paint can be suspected. So you have all these sites, and then of course the question is, why should we redevelop those? And here are a bunch of reasons as to why communities might want to get into this endeavor. Obviously, I mean, blight mitigation, I mean, in my mind at least, it's a big one because most communities are looking to attract investors, employers, and if these people come into town and they see a bunch of blight, that's probably not a good first impression. And then, of course, if you redevelop these sites, oftentimes you increase the local tax base and facilitate job growth, which is good for the community coffers. And then, of course, if there are environmental issues, the mitigation of those is helpful to ensure public health and safety. So those are just a few reasons. I'm not going to go through everything. Yeah, so it takes time. I mean, brownfield redevelopment is not something that happens overnight. I mean, you do need to have patience. So what I thought we're going to do today, I'm going to tell you a little bit about TAB, what we are, what TAB does, and then we're going to step through the redevelopment process. And in doing so, I can tell you with these steps where TAB and how TAB can assist. So TAB, the Technical Assistance to Brownfields, is a national program. It's funded by EPA. Currently, there are 6 TAB providers, so every community in the nation has access to these free TAB services. K-State TAB serves the entire midsection of the US, everything you see in this image here in purple. So as I said, I'm going to say it again, TAB services are free. There's also the tribal tag, that Tribal Technical Assistance to Brownfields, so the tribal TAB program that's headed here at K-State. In this image, you see the regional technical assistance partners and the tribal professional providers. So also covering the entire United States. So as I already said, TAB Assistance to Communities is free. We are not developers here at TAB. We also are not performing environmental site assessments. But TAB has a lot of partners. That's necessary because we're covering such a large area. So there is a lot of expertise, various expertise like economic, environmental, planning, architecture, landscape architecture expertise. And all of that brings to bear, obviously, on brownfields redevelopment. So whatever we do is tailored to specific community needs. There's no one-size-fits-all approach, coordinated through the city, tribal, or not-for-profits, brownfields project managers, but we also have worked with and are working with grassroots organizations. Communities are accepted on a first-come, first-served basis, but I've been associated with TAB now for over 20 years, and we never had to turn a community away. It might not be happening right the next day, but definitely the assistant will come in a reasonable time frame. There's really no application process. It takes an email or a call, and then we'll see how we can help. So here are some of the TAB services. This is not an exhaustive list. What I tell communities always, if you have a need, just call and we see what we can do. So we have the Brownfields inventory tool, which I talk a little bit more about later. We can help with strategic planning and redevelopment visioning. That's a big one that a lot of communities ask for. Market analyses, community outreach, workshops, webinars such as this one. Resource roadmaps help identify funding sources for brownfield redevelopment. That's another big one that we get asked a lot. We review grant applications, the EPA brownfield grant applications. We don't write them. And we developed a tool called TAB Easy that assists communities interested in applying with their application. I put here help finding and evaluating environmental consultants. That does not mean that we tell you who you should hire. What that means is that we can help you develop an RFP, a request for proposal, so you get what you want. And then we can help you evaluate responses so then you can compare apples to apples. Review of plans and technical reports. Oftentimes we're asked to kind of just summarize that in a 1 or 2 pager, like this thick report that we just got back from our consultants, and just tell us like the highlights, you know, what's in it, so we can take it to a commission meeting, and so we are all on the same page and understand it, because these reports tend to be full of acronyms and technical lingo. And then any other assistance as needed and agreed upon. So it's a fairly exhaustive list, but as I said, not everything that we can do is on here. So brownfield redevelopment process and areas where TAB can potentially help. So this is a very simplified step. 1, you plan. What are you going to do with these brownfields? How does that help your community investigation? This means the environmental investigation to see if there's any contamination, and then the redevelopment of the site or the corridor. This slide breaks it down a little bit more. So you identify your brownfields, you tie your brownfields to your redevelopment goals and plans that you hopefully have in place. And that's a very important step. And then you investigate, then you clean up if that is necessary, and then you redevelop. So identification of brownfields can be as simple as making a list or producing a map of potential sites that you want to address. You can do spreadsheets, you can do pen and paper, maybe you have GIS at your disposal, or you can use TAB's Brownfields Inventory Tool short BIT, which is basically a database. It's password protected, so only you will be able to see what you put in there unless you choose to share. That option is there as well. And it has a backend that drops into acres. If you have an EPA Brownfields grant, you can use that to produce your quarterly reports as well, if you want to. So lots of options, but basically it's a huge spreadsheet that allows you to enter a bunch of information regarding the site or sites that you're looking at. What you also want to do once you have identified your brownfields, and chances are you have more than one, you want to prioritize them based on community goals, environmental conditions. A lot of these sites are in private ownership, so it's important, is the owner cooperating or not? And then the site status. If that site is already in some sort of state or federal program, it might preclude that particular site to be considered a brownfield site and to be addressed under the Brownfield program. But most importantly, the question that you need to ask yourself is, how can these sites meet your redevelopment goals? So once you have your brownfield site, you want to establish redevelopment goals and plan for redevelopment, unless you have done that already in a larger setting. So the vision for the site, the area, or even the small region, that's important. What are the community needs and opportunities? So that's an area where TAB can help you with develop that vision based on community input. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. You want to set goals and make plans. You want to identify partners and funding sources. And the funding sources we can help you with once you have identified what you want to do. You want to review your area plans if you have any, your zoning, your codes, to make sure that whatever you want to do is a good fit. Or change your plans and your zoning, not the plans necessarily, but the zoning and the codes, to make sure that what you want to do will actually happen within the guidelines that you have. And then be ready to adjust and revise your plans as needed. Because as I said, you know, brownfields redevelopment takes some time. So it may change, the vision may change, it may need to get tweaked. So just be prepared for that. Community engagement throughout and involvement of all stakeholders is critical. And sometimes, actually a lot of times, we get asked, you know, so who should be at these meetings? If we do a visioning meeting, like who should we, the community, invite? So here is a list. Again, not exhaustive, but you can see that it draws from all sorts of walks of life. So you have the business community, you have the local planners, you have the local leadership, of course. You have all interested residents, economic development agencies, planning commissions, if you have those, not-for-profits. So you want to cast a wide net. Public participation is very important, especially if you're thinking of applying for an EPA Brownfields grant, assessment or cleanup or revolving loan. EPA is very big on public engagement and participation. So the more you can do and the better you do it, the better off you are later on with your redevelopment too. So on this slide, the impact of public engagement increases from the top to the bottom. So at the very least, you need to inform residents and stakeholders of what you're doing, what you're thinking of doing. But the best way to do public participation and engagement is actually consulting with community members to see what do they want to see, what are their priorities, what are their values, what do they think is beneficial for the community in terms of this brownfields redevelopment. And then you want to integrate that input that you receive into your vision and your reuse plans throughout. So basically, it's a collaborative partnership that exists throughout the redevelopment. And of course, information and transparency are key here, so don't forget that. So here are some tools. This is what I call my COVID slide. It used to be we did everything non-virtual, right? I mean, we use, like we as in like communities who wanted to do community engagement. So they notified their residents, pretty much using everything on the right-hand side of your screen. But then during COVID, it shifted more to the virtual realm because people got more familiar with Zooms and blogs and web pages and QR codes and social media. So it kind of depends what your community responds best to as to what you want to use to get the word out and to engage the community. Personally, I think in-person meetings, maybe in conjunction with other means, are still the best way to do that. What I put down here is a slide that I found on the web. That the community was wanting to find out how to redevelop, how to make this park that you see a little bit of here better. And the question that they asked is, what activities would make you come out here during lunch? And they put that sign there, they put a phone number there, and they asked people to text them, just like a simple text, just with like a picnic area or a playground or what have you. And that, in conjunction with everything else that they did, proved to be really helpful. There's also a resource here listed on the bottom of the slide that, again, is popped up during COVID, but it's still relevant now that we are kind of out of the, what I would call maybe the main impact of COVID. So there are lots of engagement tools out there. What we at TAB can help you with is, and I already mentioned it, is these visioning sessions, what we call visioning sessions, like community meetings where invited stakeholders, invited by the community, selected by the community, brainstorm as to what should happen with a brownfield site, a brownfield corridor, or like a larger area. So we usually split them up into groups, as you can see here. That was a recent one here in St. Louis that we did. This one was a fun one where we actually were at a local brewery. That was Joplin, Missouri. And they brainstorm in small groups, and they come up with their 5 highest priorities for a site. And you can kind of see here on these big flip charts. And then all attendees are getting votes in forms of little dots, and they are asked then, after every table, every group reports out, to put their votes behind whatever they like best of all these ideas. So it could be they put all their votes behind one idea, or they kind of put 1 here, 3 there. I mean, whatever works for them. And then we tally all this up. And usually we work with the landscape architect, and based on this community input, the landscape architect will come up with a conceptual drawing as to how this site could be redeveloped. Sometimes we combine this with like a survey that we send out either ahead of time or after. Sometimes communities only want to do the survey. So, I mean, it can take various shapes and forms, but these visioning sessions are usually very, very well received. So here are some examples, what comes out of these sessions. This one was in Michigan, an old ski resort, and you see that the reuse scenarios got sketched in here. This one was in Nebraska, where the community was looking to beautify, in quotes, this intersection it's like a major rail line that goes through town, and this here is the main drag through town. It looked kind of dismal, so like trees and a train watching station and all this kind of stuff. And this one here that you see here is the old Union Station in Joplin, Missouri. It had these beautiful windows with the original glass, more or less intact, 2 stories, And then there was a floor plan that was developed based on community input, and then like some drawings that went with it. Actually, a lot of drawings. So those are some outputs. Here is one closer to home. This is Carrington, Kansas. Approach was a little bit different here. This is like the main street. This is how it looks. It might still look like this. This was like, gosh, 3 years ago now when we did this. Also based on community input, what would they see? And they said, well, you know, we want to have a better image. So the plan then came about to put trees here in the median, which I believe they had way back when already, and then they did away with it because of parking and traffic. But you can see the difference that this makes just to put some greenery, so to speak, in the picture. This here is also an interesting approach that came out. This is, I mean, you can see here, this was just a glass front, nothing special, looked kind of bland, although it was an occupied building. And you can apparently get this window vinyl. You can print whatever you want on it, fairly inexpensive, and it makes a big difference. It's all of a sudden much more inviting. So that was an output. Investigation phase for a brownfield. So that's the next step in the process after you do these first two. I'm not going to talk much about that because Seth already covered that in the previous webinars. Same with the cleanup. What I want to say is just remember phase ones are important. They have a shelf life though, but they're important for your liability protection. Where we can help in this kind of phase, the investigation and the cleanup, is basically on the slide. So help and evaluate environmental consultants. I already told you that it's not something where we pick your consultants. We can review project plans, guidance through the framework, review of brownfields, EPA brownfield applications, and APCA reviews. So that's pretty much our involvement. I mean, we as K-State TAB don't do environmental site assessments or cleanup. For the redevelopment process, you should have identified various needs and opportunities, and we can help you with that. I already went through some of that. Plans, master plans, if you have those, hopefully make sure they are current, update if needed. And the community input, we can help you with that. Resources and partners to development lined up. We can also help you with that. We have lots of partners that are very comfortable with economic development and may have some partners or know of some partners that you might want to hook up with for your redevelopment. So resource roadmaps, that's the financial aspect. We can do that, feasibility studies, market analyses, and these resource roundtables where we invite different TAB partners to the table to talk about your project and brainstorm ideas as to how to make it happen. This is an example of a resource roadmap. So basically we list the funding opportunities. Here, the amount and the match if one is required, the funding opportunity description, the deadlines, and what it all entails. So it's fairly exhaustive. Smaller things, TAB services. A lot of communities are looking at brownfield sites for community gardens. So through a collaboration with the K-State Department of Agronomy, we can do some soil testing. It is fee-based, but it's very inexpensive. And before I say a wrong amount, I'm not going to say anything. If you if you want to know, just send me an email and I will tell you. I think there are some samples, a few samples up front that might be free, and then it's fee-based, as I said. Brownfields to Brightfields, that's a new one. So that's also via a K-State partner, the Rocky Mountain Institute. So this is for communities who are thinking of utilizing their brownfield sites for like solar energy generation. So this partner can help with like a suitability analysis, maybe the siting of the panels, resource identification for implementation. So it's like a consulting kind of thing. The e-tools bit I already mentioned. So this is the Brownfields inventory tool. And here is Tab Easy that helps you write the grants according to the guidelines of the year for assessment, cleanup, multipurpose, and RLF, with a bunch of helpful hints and tips associated with it. Again, application, there's none. Just kind of ask and call, and we will make sure that you get what you need. Contact information for all of this, for especially Kansas. So that would be me. I'm the contact for Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska, as I mentioned. But you have choices. You can talk to Maggie. She is the TAB director for EPA, Region 7 and 8, or Jacob Roeder. He is the assistant TAB director for EPA 7, Region 7. And I think that, yep, that's it. So are there any questions? This presentation will be uploaded or may already be uploaded to the website where you registered. This presentation is also recorded, so you have both slides and the narrative that goes with it. We also would really appreciate it if you would fill out the evaluation. That only would take you like a minute or two here. It's not long. I think it has like 3 questions, if I remember correctly. So either use the link that you see here. Dana will also put that link in the chat, I believe, or you can use the QR code. So I'm going to leave this up a little bit. And in the meantime, Seth, do you see any questions that popped in? You're muted, Seth. I can't hear you.
Sorry. I don't see any questions. I would like to mention that we'll be having a follow-up in-person workshop in Wichita the morning of August 6th, which is a Tuesday. You don't need to have attended the webinar series because the recordings will remain posted on TAB's website. For the workshop, we'll be encouraging attendees to bring a site or sites for us to discuss. We'll select a couple to go over as a group to discuss on how to initiate the process, specific resources and funding that may support the proposed redevelopment. And then we may also go into a couple of case studies of completed or projects that are imminently to be completed. And we'll discuss the process and the funding that they use to drive their project to completion. So yeah, just something to look forward to in August. It's the first full week of August. And yeah, we would like to see and discuss any sites that you have and kind of brainstorm collectively on a few of them so that you can have an idea of what what the options are, and then we can still follow up after the workshop to discuss your site in more detail. It doesn't look
Still
like
no
we
questions?
have any more. No more questions. There are no questions.
All right. Well, in that case, thanks for attending. I know this was like a whirlwind tour through through the TAB services. But again, if you need anything, if you have questions, just call and we'll be happy to help you out. So thanks a lot and have a good rest of your day.